Welcome back to Handheld Hero. I spent about 10 hours with Saros so you don't have to. And just to be clear, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I'm mostly showing early game footage because I don't want to ruin later bosses, later areas, or some of the bigger surprises. But after spending real time with the game, my quick take is this: Saros is a nightmare, but it is a fair one. If you liked Returnal, then Saros was probably already on your radar. Same studio, same intense sci-fi energy, same feeling that every room is trying to erase you from existence, but Saros feels different. Returnal was brilliant, but it could also feel like it hated your time. One bad room, one bad mistake, one unlucky moment after a long run, and suddenly, it felt like the game took everything from you. Saros still has teeth. This is not a soft game. It is not a casual version of Returnal. And it is definitely not a game where you can just turn your brain off and cruise through it. But this time, it feels like Housemarque gives you better tools to fight back. That is what makes Saros interesting. It is not easier because it is weak, it is easier because it is smarter. So today, I want to talk about the combat, the progression, the atmosphere, the friction, and whether Saros is actually worth your time. Because after about 10 hours, I do think this game is good, but I also think it is not going to be for everybody. Let's start with the obvious part. The combat is the reason Saros works. This is where Housemarque is still elite. The movement is fast, the shooting feels sharp, the enemies fill the screen with projectiles, and every fight feels like this constant balance between panic and control. At its best, Saros does not feel like a regular third-person shooter. It feels like a bullet hell game wearing the body of a cinematic PS5 exclusive. You are not just aiming and shooting. You are reading patterns, you are dodging through danger, you are choosing when to push, when to back off, when to parry, when to reposition, and when to stop being greedy. And that is where the game gets addictive. Because when you die, most of the time, it does not feel like the game cheated you. It feels like you know exactly what went wrong. You dashed too early, you stayed too close, you got too aggressive, you ignored the projectiles coming from the side, you tried to finish an enemy when you should have created space. That is the difference between a hard game and an unfair game. Saros is hard, but most of the time, it feels fair. And that matters a lot, because when a game is this intense, the controls have to be clean. If the movement feels sloppy, the whole thing falls apart. But here, when you are locked in, the game feels smooth. There is a rhythm to it, almost like a dance. You enter a room, everything starts moving, the screen gets loud, and for a few minutes, you are just completely inside the loop. That is the best part of Saros. When the combat clicks, it feels amazing. Now, the biggest difference between Saros and Returnal is not just the setting or the story, it is how the game handles progression. This is where Saros feels more respectful of your time. In Returnal, part of the tension was that every run felt extremely fragile. You could have a great build, make it deep into the game, and then one bad situation could make everything fall apart. Some people love that. And honestly, I get it. That kind of pressure can be exciting, but it can also be exhausting. Saros feels like it learned from that. It still wants you to fail. It still wants you to learn. It still wants you to earn progress, but it gives you more of a sense that your time is actually building towards something. Even when a run does not go perfectly, you still feel like you are moving forward. You understand the enemies better. You start recognizing patterns. You start learning which tools fit your playstyle. And the permanent progression makes the whole loop feel less punishing. That is where the Hades comparison makes sense. You are not just slamming your head into a wall, you are slowly chipping away at it. And for me, that makes the game better. Some hardcore players might say that makes it too forgiving. They might say it removes some of the purity from the challenge, but I do not agree. I do not need every roguelite to feel like a second job. If I am putting hours into a game, I want to feel like those hours matter. Saros still tests you, it still asks you to get better. But it also understands that difficulty does not have to mean wasting the player's time. And that is probably the biggest reason I think a lot of people may connect with Saros more easily than Returnal. It still has the intensity, but it feels less punishing for the sake of being punishing. That said, Saros is not perfect. There are still moments where the friction shows up. And in a game this fast, small friction matters. When the combat is moving at full speed, every defensive tool has to feel responsive. If something feels even slightly delayed, you notice it immediately. Some mechanics can feel a little slower than you want them to feel, especially when the screen is packed and you are trying to react instantly. And when that happens, it can be frustrating because Saros is so dependent on rhythm. The game is at its best when it feels like every input connects directly to what you wanted to do. So when something breaks that rhythm, even for a second, it stands out. The other thing is pacing. The action is so good that anything pulling you away from the action has to justify itself. And not every slower moment does. The hub area, the conversations, the downtime between runs, I understand why they are there. They give the game structure. They give the world more context. They make the experience feel bigger than just room after room of combat. But sometimes, I just wanted to get back into the run. That is the challenge with a roguelite like this. The loop is everything. And if the game slows down too much between attempts, it can mess with that momentum. It does not ruin the game, but it does make the experience feel uneven at times. Saros is strongest when it lets you move, fight, react, and learn. When it slows down too much, that is when I felt myself getting pulled out of it. Now let's talk about the story and atmosphere, because this is where I think people are going to split. Saros is not really a traditional story-driven game. This is not the kind of game where every plot point is explained clearly, every character has a clean emotional arc, and the story moves like a movie. It is more abstract than that. The game leans into cosmic horror, mystery, strange environments, and that feeling that the world is hiding something bigger from you. And honestly, I think the atmosphere is much stronger than the actual storytelling. That is not necessarily a bad thing. Some games work because of the plot. Saros works because of the mood. The visuals, the sound design, the enemy design, the pressure of each run, the way the world feels hostile and strange, that is where the game does most of its storytelling. You're not always playing because you need to know exactly what happens next. You're playing because the whole thing has this heavy, hypnotic feeling to it. It feels strange. It feels dangerous. It feels like you are not supposed to be there, and that is effective. But if you are the kind of player who needs a clear story, clear answers, and a more emotional narrative, Saros might leave you a little cold. For me, the atmosphere carried it, but I can see some players calling the story vague. I can see some players saying it is trying too hard to be mysterious, and I do not think that criticism is unfair. This is one of those games where the vibe is the point. If you buy into that, it works. If you do not, the story might not be enough to pull you through on its own. So after spending about 10 hours with Saros, my verdict is this. Saros is absolutely worth paying attention to. It is polished, intense, confident, and when the combat clicks, it feels incredible. The movement is fast, the shooting feels sharp, and the chaos is readable enough that the game feels fair most of the time. The progression also makes a huge difference. This game still challenges you, but it does not feel like it is constantly trying to waste your time. That is why I keep coming back to the same idea. Saros is a nightmare, but it is a fair nightmare. It is not going to be for everyone. If you hate roguelites, if you hate repeating runs, or if you need a very clear story, this might not be the game that changes your mind. But if you like fast action, sci-fi horror, bullet hell chaos, and games that make you feel yourself improving over time, Saros is a strong PS5 exclusive. My hot take is that Saros may end up being better than Returnal for a lot of players. Not because it is easier, but because it respects the player more. It understands that hard does not have to mean miserable. It can pressure you, punish you, and force you to improve, while still making your time feel like it matters. But now we get to the real question, is Saros worth $70? For me, the answer is yes, but only for the right player. If you already liked Returnal, Hades, or intense roguelites, I think Saros is worth full price. You are probably the exact audience this game was made for. If you are curious but not fully sold on roguelites, I would wait for a sale. And if you already know you hate repeating runs, abstract stories, and games that make you fail before you improve, then skip it. So the simple verdict is, buy it if you love roguelites. Wait for a sale if you are curious. Skip it if you bounced hard off Returnal. That is the value punchline. Saros is beautiful, stressful, intense, and fair. It will not hold your hand. It will just give you better tools to survive the nightmare. But what do you think? Is Saros looking better than Returnal, or does Returnal still have the edge? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy quick gaming reviews and breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe to Handheld Hero.